Hey everyone. Today, we're diving into the spooky, blood-soaked lore of Bloodseeker. Let's talk about where this guy comes from and why he's basically the star of his own horror flick. Spoiler alert, you don't want to be on his guest list. First things first, his real name is Strygwyr. Yeah, try saying that 5 times fast. But apparently, in some ancient languages, it means vampire or blood drinker. So, right off the bat, you know this dude's not exactly the life of the party. In fact, if you ever find yourself at a barbecue and see him show up, just leave. Don't even grab your chips. Trust me. Now, if you're thinking, okay, blood, cool, what's the catch? Well, buckle up, because his backstory is like something straight out of a nightmare. Here's the twist. Bloodseeker's story kind of reminds me of the Persian legend of Zahhak. Zahhak was this evil king who had snakes growing out of his shoulders. Yeah, you heard that right, snakes. And these snakes were hungry for brains. So every time they got hungry, guess what? He had to feed them brains or else they'd eat his face. No, seriously, talk about some royal problems. Now, Bloodseeker doesn't have snakes on his shoulders, thank goodness. But the whole feed me blood or else thing? Yeah, pretty much the same. But wait, it gets even crazier. Turns out, Bloodseeker's inspiration is actually from the Aztec Empire, the ancient civilization that took blood rituals way more seriously than your average goth teenager. The Aztecs believed that sacrificing blood was basically their way of keeping the universe from falling apart. It was like their version of a Sunday roast, but instead of turkey, you're offering up people to the gods. Yikes, right? Bloodseeker's obsessed with blood the way the Aztecs were obsessed with, well, blood. It's kind of like their sacrifice at the altar vibes, but, way more dangerous and chilling. Oh, and here's the real kicker. When Bloodseeker talks, he's got this Spanish vibe going on. You'll hear him drop lines like sangre sagrada, which translates to sacred blood. Like, whoa. Talk about taking blood worship to the next level. If Bloodseeker was a chef, I bet his specialty would be blood pudding, and he'd serve it with a side of doom. So picture this. Bloodseeker isn't just some random dude running around drinking blood. He's a savage enforcer from a place where blood is literally everything. It's like his whole world is Halloween, and he's the guy in the costume that's just a little too convincing. The best part is how he blends all these ancient influences. A bit of Zahhak's I need brains or I'll die vibe? Check. A heavy dose of Aztec blood sacrifices for the gods, energy, you bet. Add some intense passion for the dark and the bloody, and you've got yourself Bloodseeker, a character who's both terrifying and kind of hilarious in his devotion to, well, sacrifices. So, as we watch the video, keep this in mind. Bloodseeker is not just your average spooky character. He's a full-on, blood-chugging, dark ritual-having mythical creature of the night. And you don't want to mess with him. Let's see what this bloodthirsty beast can do. All right, let me tell you about Strygwyr. Yeah, people call him the Bloodseeker. A mindless freak, driven by nothing but his thirst for blood. A deadly hunter who literally sucks the life out of his victims. Straight up nightmare fuel for anything with blood in its veins. That's what most folks think, right, when they hear his name. But here's the thing. He's more than just like a monster. There's a purpose behind his horrifying actions. Something bigger. Now, not many people remember the ancient land of Zakata cattle, like we're talking way back, okay? But a few elders, like those old timers who still have their memories intact, they can tell the story. They can tell the story. And dude, let me tell you, it's wild. So, believe it or not, there was a time when people of Zakata cattle lived without fear, like no terror of the Flayed Twins. Yeah, they had peace. Their lives were tough, sure. I mean, they lived high up in these crazy mountains surrounded by like steep cliffs and just harsh terrain. But hey, they made it work. The biggest problems they had, like finding food, water, and, shelter. Survival wasn't easy, especially in a place like Sakatacatl. Resources were super scarce, but just like, any tough as nails community, they adapted. They figured out ways to live even in those unforgiving peaks. And then everything changed. The Flayed Twins showed up, yeah. But what happened after that? That's a weird story. Trust me, though, it's not pretty. All right, let's slow this down for a sec because, damn, This is where Zahhak's story takes a hard left into pure nightmare territory. The worst thing that ever happened to that place, two gods, if you can even call them that, rolled up. The Flayed Twins. And these weren't your nice gods, the ones who bless the harvest or whatever. Nah. These two, they showed up and everything fell apart. Fast. First thing they did, massacre. No buildup, no warning, just straight up slaughter. And for what? Blood. Buckets of it. Oceans of it. These two weren't satisfied with a little sacrificial offering. Nope. They were bottomless pits. Insatiable. Picture it. You're living your life, scratching out a living on this cold, isolated mountain. Then these things show up, and suddenly, your neighbors, your family, gone. Everyone's terrified. Nobody knows what's happening at first. People are dropping like flies. The whole land is drowning in fear. And the worst part? These gods weren't just bloodthirsty. They were never full. No matter how much blood they took, it wasn't enough. And when they got thirsty, oh man, that's when things got really bad. Villages wiped off the map, people drained dry. They didn't care if they killed everyone. And honestly, they almost did. So now the people of Zahhak are desperate. They're looking around like, what do we even do? You can't fight gods. Not these ones. But maybe, you can bargain. The elders and warriors, they hatch this wild plan. They figure, look, if we can't stop them, maybe we can feed them, keep them satisfied, maybe even save what's left of the community. So they go to the twins. They're like, all right, listen, we'll hunt for you, bring you fresh blood, enough to keep you fed. Just leave us alone. And the twins, they're into it. Creepy, bloodthirsty gods like deals, apparently. Okay, fine, you keep us happy and we won't destroy you. Oh, and if you really impress us, we'll give you a taste of our power. And man, that's when things get even darker. The elders send their strongest warriors to the twins, and these gods, they don't just shake hands and seal the deal. Oh no. They transform these warriors, twist them into something else. They give them these cursed weapons and armor, all powered by blood. Every drop spilled with those weapons, straight to the twins, like a blood pipeline. Now, these hunters, they're not just protecting Zahhak, they're scouring the surrounding lands, hunting anything and everything, animals, people, whatever bleeds. Their whole purpose is to gather blood, keep the twins happy. And for a while, it works. Zahhak is safe. The twins are fed. But let's be real, when has a deal with gods like that ever ended well? You can feel it, right? This is not going to stay okay. All right, picture this. Generations come and go, and the people of Zahhak, they're all about raising warriors, like real deal fighters. Their secret weapon? These twins with flayed skin. Yeah, sounds creepy, right? But these twins weren't just some sideshow. They were the source of the people's power, feeding their endless thirst for blood. But then, things flipped. Over time, the people stopped fearing the twins, like they weren't seen as monsters anymore. Nah, instead, they became something else. Gods. Gods worth worshipping. And get this, their whole culture, their entire religion, started revolving around these flayed twins. Blood wasn't just blood anymore. It became sacred. Their rituals, man, they were soaked in it, literally. Their magic, all blood-based. And here's where it gets insane. They had these spells that turned their warriors into absolute machines in battle. Imagine this. Spill some blood and boom, they're healed, like instant regen. But that's not even the craziest part. These warriors could hurt their enemies by just splashing blood on the ground. Splash! Damage done. And the twins? Oh, they weren't just chilling in the background. Sometimes they'd straight up possess the warriors during fights. Take full control, guiding every move like some divine battle commanders. It was savage. It was bloody. But to them, the people of Zahhak, man, they almost forgot about all the horrors, all that stuff they went through just to survive. But even after all that time, the whole thing, the threat from those twin gods, it's still there. It's hanging over their heads like a dark cloud. If those gods don't get their blood, they'll drain the whole mountain dry, leave nothing behind. Now, Strygwyr, he's the last of the great warriors and hunters left, and he's the one stuck with protecting his people through all this. But it's not just about defense for him anymore. Over time, his whole thing has twisted, and he's not just fighting to keep them safe. He's like reveling in the bloodshed. The more he goes at it, the more he buys into those gods, those flayed up monsters. In his eyes, they They deserve every drop of blood that gets spilled, you know? They asked for it, so now he's giving it to them. So, what better place than an ancient battlefield, right, to go hunting for blood? I mean, that's kind of where Bloodseeker comes in, but like I've added some extra stuff to it. If you've read the original stories or you've played the game, you're probably going to recognize a lot of it. The people are in the mountains, yeah, and those twin gods, like they really do feast on them, needing blood to survive. The rituals, totally true. That's all in there. But I've like thrown in a lot more extra stuff that isn't really in the original stories. So like if you're thinking about quoting this video or using any of this, just know I've added some spice, you know? The core idea is still there, but I've stretched it out a little, made it a bit more flavorful. Just saying, you know? So let's talk about one of Valve's real gems tied to this story. So there's this moment in Bloodseeker where he comes across a city, right? And instead of like the usual sacrifice stuff where they offer people to the gods, they're just executing them with a guillotine. And Bloodseeker's like, what the hell are these idiots doing? Why are they just killing them? Why aren't they offering them to the gods? Like, it doesn't make sense to him. So he decides to, you know, blend in. He dresses up like them, walks right in, and spends a whole season like watching what they're doing, trying to figure it all out. And yeah, he finds out that every time they want to execute someone, they take them out to this desert and just chop their heads off with the guillotine. But here's the crazy part. There's this like thug always hanging around watching the executions. And he's not just watching, he's loving it. Like he gets off on it. And eventually, Bloodseeker realizes something wild. This thug who's been watching all the killings isn't just some random guy. He's actually a god in disguise. Like all these executions, it's actually a kind of twisted sacrificial ritual. Honestly, I'm not even sure what the full meaning of that part of the story is, but it's kind of cool, you know? There's some weird philosophy behind it, but like, I can't fully put my finger on it. Then there's this other item, the courier seekling, right? In the description, it talks about how this courier, just like Bloodseeker, started off like as a servant, right? Carrying items around, doing the grunt work. But then he decides he wants to become a hunter. And then there's this character, Zahhak. This guy wanted to like use Bloodseeker twins, those twin gods. They show up and, well, they don't let him do it. Though, by the time they show up, it's kind of too late. Bloodseeker's already changed. His look's different, his swords are different. He's not the same anymore.